Hello, everybody. Oh, thank you. I'd like to ask you to think of someone you know who's a good mentor. Could be a coach, or a teacher, or a leader in your community. Just let your mind settle on somebody you know who's really invested in other people and their development. Okay, I'm going to ask you to shift a little bit. Think about what it is that makes this person so good. What do you see them doing? How do they show up in ways that are both admirable and effective? Now, I bet you're thinking about all the great things that good mentors do to facilitate growth and learning and development. But I'd also be willing to bet that you're thinking a bit about how good mentors make us feel. Good mentors make us feel important. They make us feel like we're worth the investment of their time. They make us feel empowered and like we can achieve our goals. I'd like to suggest that these feelings are a reflection of care. Care is the more emotional side of mentoring, and it's reflected in anything that promotes the mentee's health, well-being, and success. And my work shows that care is at the center of good mentoring relationships, and they're a key part of what makes these relationships work. Now, this all may sound very straightforward, but in addition to showing that care is so critical to good mentoring relationships, my work also shows that when mentoring relationships aren't going very well, that it's often because mentors have either forgotten or didn't even know that care should be at the center of their practice. Let me offer you an example. I'm often asked to facilitate workshops and conversations between mentors and mentees to help them relate to each other better, to help them with their relationships. And at one recent session, I was talking to a group of mentors, and I asked them to think about what they felt confident about. What were their strengths in their mentoring relationships? Most of them felt really good about their ability to help their students think about their career development and long-term planning. Most said that they felt pretty good about skill development and helping their mentees learn how to do very concrete things. But when I asked them about what they were less confident about, most of them shared things that were directly related to care. They talked about being worried about their ability to offer emotional support, about their lack of awareness on whether and how to offer encouragement, and they worried about their capacity to build personal connections with their mentees. Now, in many ways, this is completely understandable. Most mentors don't receive any training at all to engage in these relationships. And in so many ways, it feels easier at times to focus on the learning and the skill development that happens in these relationships, just assuming that this personal, emotional, fuzzy stuff will just take care of itself. But at the same time, alarms are going off in my head because these mentor strengths were not at all in alignment with how I understood their mentees' needs. I'd met with their mentees the week before, and they shared with me that while they certainly understood the importance of skill development and career planning, that they were very intentional about naming their need for care. They talked about needing encouragement when things were not going very well. They talked about needing to feel like their mentors cared about their lives and their interests outside of work and school. They needed grace when they made mistakes. My work shows that when mentor strengths are out of alignment with mentees' needs, there's going to be conflict in the relationship. There's going to be frustration, and there's going to be friction. And so often, mentees come out on the losing end. They get confused, they can be discouraged, and they ultimately become disengaged. And this is the exact opposite of what we hope will happen in the context of these relationships. So what do we do? If we know that care is so central and so critical to good mentoring relationships, how can we be more intentional about cultivating it? I'm currently collaborating with Dr. Brad Johnson on the 3rd edition of a book. It's called I'm Being a Mentor. And there's a strategy that we offer in the book that I'd like to share with all of you today. We argue that rather than seeing care as an emotion, we have to shift to understanding care as an action. I used to think that I couldn't force anybody to care about their mentees. I used to think it was this feeling that you either had or you didn't have for the people that you worked with. But I've come to understand care as a competency. It has a skill set that can be learned and demonstrated and developed. Mentees feel cared about when their mentors make time for them despite busy schedules. Mentees can see care when their mentors ask them questions about themselves and their interests outside of work and school. We have to remember that care is not just something that we feel. It's something that we act out in behaviors that remind somebody that they and their needs are important to us. I'd like to close today with something I often share with my colleagues and with my students. Mentoring isn't really a behavior. It's a relationship. Unlike so many other close relationships, care is so critical to making it work. I see care as a catalyst. It opens the door to all of the wonderful outcomes that we'd expect to come from mentoring relationships. We all have opportunities to serve as mentors in our schools, at our jobs, in our communities. As we engage in this important work, I want to encourage all of you to be intentional about building your capacity to care. Thank you very much.